What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we'll be chatting with Ku Khahil from Locked On Pistons as the Detroit Pistons select Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren in this year's NBA draft. Did the Detroit Pistons win this year's NBA draft? They certainly feel like they did. But first, a quick message from our friends over at rockauto.com, because look, when it comes to cars, there's so many different makes and models. It's almost impossible to keep track of all the different parts that you would possibly need, and you really just can't do it with a traditional like brick and mortar storefront. Why waste time going all the way down in person to a local car dealership or chain storefront, right? And you're just like, hey, do you have this part for my... No, you can save time and money when using rockauto.com. Why would you want to spend up to 30, 50, even 100% more for the exact same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Best of all, rockauto.com is a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers online for over 20 years. The prices are always reliably low for every single customer. They've got everything that you could possibly need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even brand new carpet. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solutions to your auto parts needs. And here's the really important part. When you go to their website, when you go to checkout, be sure to write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Be sure to visit rockauto.com. Joining us now is Ku Khahil from Locked On Pistons. You can follow on Twitter at Ku Khahil. Now, Ku, I'd love to sit here and tell you that the Houston Rockets had the best draft of the night. But I can't. I don't think I can, because I think the Pistons actually came away with the number one, I guess, haul from this past draft night. You walk away with Jaden Ivey at pick number 5, Troy Reaver trading for Jalen Duren with the 13th selection. I mean, let's start with Jaden Ivey here first, Ku. Were you expecting Ivey at 5, and how do you like his fit in Detroit, and what does it mean to add a guy like that as the backcourt running mate for Cade Cunningham for hopefully years to come?
So over the last few weeks, I did think that Jaden Ivey probably was going to be the pick at 5, because it sounded like the Sacramento Kings really wanted to get Keegan Murray, and they were obviously sitting 4. The only scenario in which I didn't think Jaden Ivey actually would fall to the Pistons if someone traded up with Sacramento to 4. But those worries kind of left me, because I felt like the Kings probably knew that if they traded back, if Jaden Ivey wasn't there at 5, the Pistons would take Keegan Murray from them. So they were kind of trapped, in my opinion, at that 4 spot, and were forced to take Keegan Murray at 4, which kind of took away all doubts for the Pistons to get Jaden Ivey at 5, which seemed to be Troy Reaver's guy all along. Jaden Ivey is going to be fantastic with the Pistons, man. Explosive athlete, a guy that the Pistons just haven't had. Cade's exceptional, but they haven't had like an explosive athlete like that from one of their main players in a long time. I mean, I guess you could say, even though he was kind of wore down a little bit, but Blake wasn't really that explosive when he was here in 18-19. But they've lacked that for a long time, and Jaden Ivey's going to bring that. He grew up in the Detroit area, so he has a bunch of family ties here as well. So it's really a great fit, and everyone's excited to have him.
Didn't they did like a special jersey presentation for Jaden Ivey, right? Well, what was that all about?
So his father played, I believe, in high school. He played high school here. I forget what school it was. I think it was Cass Tech he played. His mother played for the Detroit Shock when they were still in the WNBA, and then his grandfather, I believe, played for the Lions as well. So they gave him a jersey from each one of those with their names on the back.
Oh, wow. So a special moment for Jaden Ivey, I'm sure. So how exactly does they'll both kind of make life easier on each other, right? Jaden Ivey's going to make things easier for Cade. Cade's going to make things easier for him. How exactly does that work for that duo?
I mean, there was a video surfacing. I kind of went all over the place on Twitter that, if a video, Cade getting double the top of the key, swinging a corner pass to Saban Lee, who ends up getting blocked at the rim. Cade Cunningham creating those type of advantages for Jaden Ivey, that's probably going to be a poster dunk, or a guy just moving out of his way and letting it be a normal dunk. Like, guys aren't going to be trying to do that with Jaden Ivey. So that's easy. That's the simplest way right there. When Cade gets doubled, or he goes on a driving kick and he creates an advantage on a guy for a possible drive off of a driving kick, Jaden Ivey's probably going to be the most capable one on the roster now to take advantage of that. And that's something they really lacked last season. From anyone on the roster, no one could really take advantage of the advantages that Cade was creating for him off of these driving kicks. So Jaden Ivey, I think, is going to love playing with Cade. And just simply, Jaden Ivey is going to help Cade because he's going to take some of that stress off of him offensively. Offensively, Cade was asked to do basically everything for the Pistons this past season. So with Jaden Ivey here, I know he has to improve a ton on ball, kind of in the in-between area as well. That's where he has to grow as a player. But just having a guy who's able to take some of that off your shoulders and try to develop that area, and some of the staff's going to trust to try to take some of that burden off of Cade, really going to help Cade kind of last throughout the season, last throughout a game, so on and so forth.
Well, not only did the Pistons add a new backcourt running mate for Cade Cunningham, they anchored the middle a little bit more with a really enticing big man prospect in Jalen Duren. First, Ku, walk me through just the reaction to the move. You know, Troy Weaver in his bag, dealing a future first to be able to pick up a prospect as good as Jalen Duren. What was going through your mind when that happened?
So that trade, I don't know if you know this or if you were there, but like when Woj and Shams tweeted it, they both tweeted two different things. Shams said that Duren was going to the Knicks, and then Woj said he's going to the Pistons. I was sitting here looking at the phone for like 5 minutes waiting to see one of them correct each other. They just didn't say nothing. I had to wait for Jake. I think it was Jake Fisher or someone else ended up coming out and being like, hey, oh no, it was Mark Stein. I think Mark Stein came out and said, yeah, he's going to the Pistons. I'm like, okay, that's great. But over the last few weeks, we actually talked about it a lot over the Pistons community. It was rumors saying that Gordon Hayward, the Charlotte Hornets are going to want to attach one of their 13 or 15 picks to move off of him. So the idea when we heard this trade go off, it was like, okay, so the Pistons must be absorbing Gordon Hayward's contract for 13, which is $30 million. And that's a hefty contract. But I mean, if you're going after your guy at 13, then I can somewhat understand it. Then the news comes out. It's like, no, it's not for a $30 million contract. It's for a $9 million expiring contract and Kemba Walker. So now you're talking about a $21 million difference in year one and a $51 million difference in like year two. You're dealing with like, it was just an exceptional move by Troy Weaver to make on draft night. It didn't go. It went way better than we all thought. We thought that there was a chance that he would get 13, but we thought it would be for a bigger contract for a longer time period. And it turns out it was just an expiring $9 million contract for Kemba Walker, which is going to eventually get bought out by the Pistons. So it was a fantastic deal by Troy Weaver.
And how do you like Jalen Duren as a prospect? The idea of him, you know, kind of playing in the middle, both offensively and defensively for this Pistons squad.
So I believe he's the youngest player coming out this. I think he actually might be the youngest player in the NBA. I think I saw that is the case. So he's going to have time to grow, but right out the gate, an explosive lob threat, a guy who's going to be able to catch lobs and just throw down some big time dunks. That's something the Pistons desperately needed last year up until they traded for Marvin Bagley. They didn't have a vertical threat, a lob threat, any kind of threat really inside to put pressure on the rim at all because Isaiah Stewart just can't do that. And it really destroyed their offense. So Duren's going to be able to do that, and he's going to bring a pick-and-roll threat and a pick-and-roll partner for Cade, for Jaden Ivey, for Killian Hayes. That's something that he desperately needed, something I really wanted to make sure they addressed in this offseason, so I was happy about that. And defensively, it's probably going to be a little bit of a work in progress. He's 18 years old. He's very young. Defense is usually where rookies struggle the most coming out of college into the NBA. So I just want to see flashes of him being able to protect the rim, see if he can hold his own in wherever pick and roll coverage they want to put him out there for. But really, the most enticing thing about him is definitely his threat offensively as a pick and roll lob threat, a guy who has shown potential to be able to hit a mid range jumper, a 3-point shot sometime in his career. But really, just having that vertical threat for Cade, Jaden, and Killian is going to be a big time thing.
You mentioned his name there a moment ago, Isaiah Stewart. What does the addition of Jalen Duren mean for the future of Isaiah Stewart? Is this a situation where these two guys can maybe coexist, or is it going to have to eventually be one over the other?
So I think it sounds like that they might be willing to try them at 4 and 5 at some point this season. I am one of the biggest non-believers in Isaiah Stewart at the 4, so I think that would absolutely go horrifically. But I don't think that his arrival should mean anything for either of them. I've always said that I think Isaiah Stewart's ceiling is like as a high-quality backup center, which I think is fine. And even if he isn't, if you want to start Isaiah Stewart, again, Jalen Duren is very young. He has a long road to learn the NBA, especially defensively. So I think either one of them can start or come off the bench. It would be fine. I think what it does do, though, is probably take the Pistons out of the DeAndre Ayton running. I think that probably ends it right there. But those two guys, I think they're fine to be on the roster together, whether they're starting, one coming off the bench, or if they want, for some reason, try them at 4 and 5.
Yeah, maybe no more DeAndre Ayton sweepstakes for Detroit, but they do still have what, north of $30 million in cap space to kind of play around with, since they didn't wind up having to absorb a contract like Gordon Hayward. So, Ku, what's your best expectation for how the Pistons, approach free agency this summer, and what targets they may actually be interested in pursuing?
So I think the most interesting one going on right now is Miles Bridges, and I know there's been some reports from James Edwards of the Athletic, and some of the beat writers saying that the Pistons may just forego doing any kind of big signings, just run it back basically with this young core, let them develop another season, and just improve a little bit on the outside, get maybe some 8, 9, 10 guys in the rotation in free agency, and just don't spend a lot of your money. But now it seems like some noise going on with Miles Bridges. One of Miles Bridges' boys or his trainer posted a picture on Instagram today, actually saying Charlotte Bear paid the bag and we're going to Detroit. Ashton is a trainer for Cade, Cade Cunningham's trainer, and his cousin. Ashton's very vocal in the Pistons community, and he's been talking nonstop about how they're recruiting Miles Bridges. I don't know if that's tampering or not, but I mean, I guess it's not, since it's not technically Cade. But he's been constantly trying to recruit Miles Bridges, and there's been some back and forth between people in both camps talking about possibly Miles Bridges returning to a place where he went to college at Michigan State. So I could see that maybe happening, but I think the most likely scenario is the Pistons simply kind of run it back next year, keep this core together, and make sure they don't get anybody that's going to block any big minutes for this young core of Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes, Saddiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Duren, and Isaiah Livers. I think they do that and then just kind of replace some of their team option guys, Hamidou Diallo and Frank Jackson, with, I don't know, maybe like a Gary Harris type or Lonnie Walker's type, all like lower key free agents, and just try again next year or 2 years down the line when it's more favorable for them to spend money.
What does the future of Detroit Pistons basketball look like with Jaden Ivey joining Cade Cunningham in the backcourt, along with the rest of the exciting young Pistons core? What are they going to do in free agency? Of course, you're going to have us covered for all that and more over at Locked On Pistons. Ku, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On the NBA with me.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you having me.